Well, hello everyone. This is Carmen with Coffee with Carmen. We have our cups. I hope you have time to go get yours. I know I had announced through Facebook and Instagram that we were going to be filming today or this evening. And our topic today is details and how does God speak through those details in the Word. Throughout His Word, He gives us details about so many things that He instructed everyone He chose in the Bible. And I was reading Exodus and I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this just goes on and on and on, you know. But, but then God was like, pay attention to the details. You know, the way I instructed Moses to build the ark, you know, from the ark to the table to the lampstand to every part of it. And then He said, why? You know, and I believe that because we are in a world where everything's so fast and so many things are happening and so many words are said, we get lost in all of that and don't pay attention to the details of things. And I know when we had our last video, not last week, when we were celebrating our year, which was, you know, so good, but I was thinking about when I had said that when Moses asked God about who he was, and then God gave him an answer in detail, you know, and I remembered I said, I didn't write it down, but I want to make sure I bring that up. So I want to make sure I did that before we started with the scriptures that we chose. And, which it was Exodus 34, 5 through 6. And he says, and as he passed in front of Moses, the Lord said that he's compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faith, and in faithfulness. So when I was reading that, I thought to myself, wow, the word detail means to describe an item by item, give full particulars, to give an account in words of someone or something, including all the relevant characteristics and qualities or events. So when I read that, and I was thinking about the details, I thought, well, that's what God did. He told Moses exactly who he was, like when he described himself. So I believe that when we are talking to God and we're reading the Word, He does that for us. He gives us details about things that all of a sudden we're like, wow, like that's what you meant by that. And so I think it's important to pay attention to those details that He instructs us, instead of getting lost in everything else around us.
Yep.
So I, you know, Jenna.
Yeah.
So while we're speaking on details,
Yeah.
what were you thinking when we talked about having this topic?
Yeah.
About details.
I always first start off with the fact that you look at all of God's creation and you just see all of it.
Right.
So seeing it firsthand, experiencing it, even I know we talked about this, Carmen, but even our fingerprints, how God created our fingerprints and how they're all different, how everything's to the very detail.
Right.
And so I was actually going to read a scripture that Shauna's used before, that you actually sent to us, and I think we talked about it even last week or the week before that, at some point in time. But Psalms 139. And
so good. I want to bring it up while you read it.
Yeah, so let me start at Psalms 139 verse 13. It says, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book, before none of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God, how vast is the sum of them." And then it just talks about, the greatness of God.
Right.
But, just hearing that, and knowing that, everything that plays out in our lives is already planned by God. And we see it when we pay attention to the details.
Right.
So like when we start to be aware of it and look for these things and listen, and like an example is, just being obedient and serving at church. Like I felt God calling me to do that, and I listened and obeyed and followed through with it. And if I hadn't, like, I wouldn't have met you, right? I wouldn't have met you. We wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah.
So it's like little things that you have to pay attention to that God is calling you to along the way. That it's like, like, and you'll start to see patterns and you'll start to see things kind of interweave and get woven together. And it's kind of cool. So that's why I think, paying attention, like you said, to the details.
Right.
Yeah. And what he says about us, that he knit us together, right? Before he saw, before, saw our unformed body, like he knows exactly what we need,
right?
And he's going to provide that for us.
Right.
And we just kind of have to always be on the lookout for like what God is doing.
Right.
Yeah. I was not planning to say this. I'm only laughing because when you shared the topic of details, immediately I thought of creation and the world and how many details there are in life in general, and I only laughed. I don't even know why I laughed, and now I feel like I have to tell myself. There was something on social media, and it was like the most like prehistoric looking bird or something, and I remember looking at it was like from National Geographic or something like that, and I've never seen that bird. I don't even know what the name is, couldn't tell yet, but we were getting ready, to come here, and I was just thinking about everything that God has made, and if you took one single creation, like a bird, but us, like that verse 13, it says that he knew us before we were in our mother's womb. The process of a baby, growing, the details that we have eyelashes to protect our eyes. We, the way that our organs, our nervous system works together. The world in itself and what God did is insane, but when you look at just, like I said, just one little creation, and the detail that he put into it, I think is a demonstration and a reflection of who he is. And if you put that much thought, that much care, that much precision into his creations, it's going to be the same way in the thought, the care, and the plans that he has for our lives as well. Because he is that same God. And he's not going to give that attention to detail when making something for fun and then just let us go to the wayside, without any thought. We're not a second thought to him. Like we are his creation. And he loves us. He's proud of us. He wants us to be successful. He wants us to thrive. He wants us to overcome all of these great things. And we know that because he sent his son. And that was intentional. And even the details and the process of what Christ went through on the cross, the way that they beat him, the amount of lashes that he took on his back, and how that just happens to coincide with a number of different categories within the medical field today. Like all this crazy stuff, it was also intentional so that we could have salvation and life and freedom. So I thought about creation. I thought about the things that he has created. And I was going to share a verse, and Carmen had it written down too. And I just pulled up.
But that'll be nice. I'll let you.
I thought, I'm not surprised. I was like, I wonder if one of the girls is going to have this, because we don't talk about what verses we're going to share.
And that's what I love about it. Is that we have that connection,
Yeah. So this is John 1. I'm just going to read 1 through 3. And it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created through him, and apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. And it goes on to say a lot more than that, but I think it's a good reminder that everything first started with God. And everything was thought out by him. And I don't know what else you guys want to share, but it's kind of hard to pin down
and
details as a topic, kind of.
I know, but the thing that gets me is like, as you are in the Word, every single word, every single thing is
Oh, I
God
do wanna
always
mention something about that.
describing something in detail, letting every single person know exactly how to do it, what to do. Even when he gave the 10 Commandments, like everything is so lined up perfectly. But it's, it's the system, it's this place that we live in, this world that kind of sets all that confusion and allowing, making us kind of doubt what the details that God gives us, the instruction.
Yeah.
And even so, this situation came up this week where my son, all my kids have been in sports, and my youngest is a long jumper and a triple jumper, and his knee started swelling up. So, I took him to the doctor and everything, and some things came up that were unsettling, not according to his body, but just other stuff. And I thought, but yet through that process, the specialist that actually looked at his knee and all of that, she was a triple jumper and a long jumper, in high school and college, so she understood his desire for the sport. And not only that, but she made sure, she says, I know a couple of places for PT, but I really like this one. It's a private one. I think that they do better in focusing on that kneecap and what needs to get done.
Yeah.
And so even that, if I look at that for the way God set that up, like she didn't have to be a long jumper and a triple jumper, but God made sure that she was, so she could understand his heart and passion behind wanting to make sure that he's jumping and that type of thing. And I just thought to myself, wow, God, you're so good that you allowed this person to be there that understood him, but also sending them to, when we went for the consultation, the therapist, he was also, like in track and understood the whole, all of that. So that's what I'm saying, like God pays attention to the details. Why? Because he puts those gifts and desires in our hearts. So he made sure, because I know walking in, my son was kind of discouraged because he thought, well, maybe I'm not going to get to do that my last year. But God made sure that he did, because he appointed the right person to be there to understand him, So and those are the things that I'm like, wow, God, you're just so good, So yeah.
I love it.
I told you that story of the bread, right? Remember that? I think I said that.
Oh yeah. I remember. The lady in the bread. Sorry. Standing in the kitchen, staring at the loaf of bread, thinking, man, I should make bread from scratch. I should figure out how to do that. I know I could. And then I started thinking, the flour. I don't even think I could make flour. Flour is not healthy. That's sure not. I don't know how to do that. And then sure enough, I get that text with the name of the lady that makes the homemade bread. And then end up having an hour-long conversation with the lady that makes flour and homemade bread. Literally 2 hours after I was standing in my kitchen thinking about that. That is God. God hears our thoughts. He hears He knows everything that we need. He sees every single detail of our lives. Even the things it's great with your son, putting people in place to help him along the way. But even the things that don't fit, the things that are challenging, the things that are not pleasant, the things that we wish would just go away, even that has a place and a purpose in our lives.
It does.
And so it's fitting a puzzle piece together. It's God just puts the good and the bad, and it's all being orchestrated. And you talked about Jacob, I know, and how at the end of his life, how he came to finally say, this was all for the glory of God. And that's what it's really about, is every single little detail is being orchestrated for a bigger, grander purpose that we don't always understand.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I met with a friend this morning for coffee, and I know what circumstances she's kind of been walking through. But she said after we had been chatting for a while that she almost canceled, and I knew that she was thinking about canceling just because I know what's going on, and it's just tough, And to step away from everything for coffee. There are certain seasons where that can feel really overwhelming, honestly. Like, it's just too much time, or, I have to drive there, and then I'm sitting, and if you feel like you don't have the emotional capacity to give anything, it's, like, exhausting to even think about it. Well, she came, and it was really good, and I've shared this before with you guys, but sometimes I have a difficult time, like, feeling like I know what to say. I always want to encourage people and help, and sometimes I don't know how, or I feel like I don't know how, and so we were chatting, and I just told her, I was like, hey, I don't know how I can be a blessing to you, and I know I felt like this morning might have been tough for you to come here, and you could just see like the tears welling up in her eyes. I said, but I just want to like pour into you and encourage you, and just so you know that I'm here. And we started talking about some stuff, not in too much depth, but I was sharing James 1:5 with her, and I was like, hey, I understand you're trying to figure out a lot of details right now. There's a really big loss in her life, and she's trying to figure out logistics now of the after part of all of that. And I said, we were talking through James 1:5 and how it says that we can ask, if we lack wisdom, we can ask. And I've shared this one before. It's a verse that I love. I think because it just reminds me it's not just about wisdom, but in general, if I lack anything, I know that I can go to God and ask. And as long as I'm asking in faith and being in alignment with His Word, that verse says that He'll give it to us liberally without finding fault, as long as we're asking in faith. And we're just kind of talking through it. I'm like, hey, these are the things that it says. Like, that's something that you can hold on. And we were talking about the promises of God, this and that. Yeah. We were chatting for a really long time. Not a really long time. We chatted for a while. And at the end of it, she said, I was praying because there are so many things that I've never dealt with before, like legal stuff, contract stuff, just crazy stuff, right? And just asking God, like, I'm struggling. I feel like I've been giving it to you. I feel like I'm, trusting you, and yet I'm so overwhelmed. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And she's like, you literally just broke everything down of all the questions that I had before I came this morning. And the only reason why I didn't cancel is because I know you, I know your heart, whatever. And she's like, I don't know, maybe God will just say anything, just something through her that might help. And she's like, you literally just helped, helped me to understand what I need to do. And it's just that was so crazy to me. I think one, it's super important that we provide an opportunity, like you said, like we have to be looking for it. But I think we do also have to step out in faith too, and have conversations or reach out to people and ask for prayer, ask for help. Because when we do it on our own, we're isolated. We're going to miss out on a lot of blessings that are going to be brought into our lives from just being transparent and open. And again, maybe just providing an opportunity. But it was so crazy to me after I just in wanting to be there for my friend, the fact that she said, and we talked more than just James 1:5, but the fact that God was using that conversation to address like each and every one of the prayers that she had and things that were going on, and she left still now dealing with this extremely difficult situation, but feeling encouraged that God was responding to her, even to the point of knowing how to conduct herself in some of the meetings. She's been trying to find lawyers for business things, and it's just crazy. But it was encouraging to me because I'm like, gosh, I had no idea, right? And so it's crazy how faithful God is when we truly, genuinely seek Him with our hearts and we ask for help, we ask for wisdom. And I was laughing before when you guys were talking about how like Exodus just goes on or whatever. Have you guys ever played that game at like baby showers or I don't know, baby showers where they pull out a tray and they have all these items on it and they like walk it by everybody really slowly. It's like, I don't know, and you only get to at the end, you only get to look at it for like 5 seconds, they take it away, and you have to try and remember all the different things that you saw, and whoever has like the most stuff from it like wins or whatever. So yeah, there are definitely times where I read my word and I'm like, oh my gosh. Certain like Job, like oh I can't, like Job. But if I had seen that trait, you know, if you see, the more you see something, the more repetition there is. And when you're reading the word, it doesn't matter how many times you've read stories, God will reveal something new, because there is so much detail in everything that He's put into the stories. I mean, you could just look at the story, then you can start looking into the character of the people. You can start looking into their trials, their prayers, their attitudes, all this stuff, right? We will never get to a point where we're done studying the word. God's done revealing things to us. It's literally impossible, because the deeper we go, the more we understand, the more revelation He gives us. Like, the details are literally endless.
And it's good when you're in the word and you're reading, because since they are endless, every time you go back to read something, He shows you another detail you didn't see before. And so I think that's the beauty of His word, and I think that's why He's given us the ability to be here for one another. I know you shared last week how what God has done through us during this season. We all said it, and just walking together, reading the word together, deciding on a topic, and then we all bring our own different angle, but it's all a detail that God's given you or myself, you know. So
I think there's, well, really like two ways that God gives us details, and I think one of them is the word and reading it, and I think that the other one is through people. You know, because oftentimes you might read, I know this happens a lot with you, Carmen, is I'll be reading something. And it's crazy how, like, I'll share it with Carmen, or we'll have a conversation.
And you're sharing the same thing or something.
And then it's like along the same lines, and it's like, how? Like, how does this happen? You know, but it's amazing, because that's how, like, God speaks to you, and He really does. I know people are always like, God speaks to you? And it's like, yes. Like,
He does.
He does. And what I was going to say about, like, you being there for your friend is, like, God knew what she needed in that moment, and He used you to speak to her. So it's like, we can be on one end, right? We may be needing something in our own lives, and God sends a person into our lives to lift us up and to build us. And to remind us that He hasn't forgotten about us. He loves us, and He's there, and He sends those people into our lives. Or we might be the person that's there, like you, Shauna, encouraging, you know, and you wouldn't have necessarily been able to do that had you not been looking and paying attention to the, you know, the struggles that somebody else is having, and paying attention, like you said, you didn't really know what to say. Well,
and that's, I think, why it was so crazy to me, because I literally told her, I was like, I really don't know what to say. I don't know how I can even encourage you. I just want you to know that I'm here. And I know, and when I was thinking about, when I was saying before that He thinks of details that we don't, or that it's important that we provide an opportunity. So I text all of you guys today, everybody, and I was taking a test, and I was nervous. And I wasn't like freaking out, but I just recognized I did not have the peace that I wanted to have. And it was getting to me. And it's, I even shared with you guys that, you know, God's been kind of like walking me through renewing mindsets and breaking down just crappy belief systems of doubt that I've had about who I am and my intelligence, being smart enough to remember stuff, to do hard things, like, it's a whole thing. So I text you guys, and I knew you guys would respond. I asked for prayer. I knew you guys would be praying for me. But what I didn't even think to ask for, which is like, duh, of course, like, Jenna texts me. So I group text her, right? And then Jenna texts me, hey, are you somewhere where you can, like, take a call, or whatever you said? And I responded back, and I said, yeah, I'm at home. And she offered to pray for me. And we got on a phone call like a minute. I don't even know, like, super quick. And she prayed with me over the phone. And, like, just being in agreement, hearing those words, and I don't know, you guys, but let me tell you what, I love being prayed over. Like, I appreciate it so much. It gives me something to connect with, and it's easier sometimes for someone from the outside to pray for you because they're not struggling. Like, Jenna wasn't nervous. Like, I'm a little nervous to pray for you right now about your nervousness. No, she wasn't nervous, but I was. So I had something.
She was bold for you.
Yeah,
she was able to speak God's word into you.
Yeah, and I was able. for sure. I was able to connect with like her faith
Right.
and how she was praying for me and what she was speaking and believing for me, and I had the opportunity to be in agreement. I was like, yeah, absolutely, like, you know, and it was good, and it was so quick, and we got off the phone, and you guys praying for me and checking in and encouraging me, and Jenna praying for me over the phone, like, it almost made me feel like, not dumb in a bad way, but like, I should have just called like Carmen or Jenna or something, like, hey, like, I'm feeling a little nervous, will you pray with me? And I didn't think of it, but she provided the opportunity, and that was a tiny detail that, again, I hadn't thought of. I didn't know it was going to happen, and yet it was such a massive blessing, because it was like a new foundation, because from that point on, I had a peace that I didn't have before. And I went into my test, I did great. Haven't gotten a score back yet, but I know I did good. And those are the types of things, those are the type of opportunities I think it's important that we offer to create it, but also we have those also to receive in Christ. And he cares about us so much that even our nerves at times are important to him, that he wants to like bring a blessing and bring peace into that.
And it's because he loves us, you know, he's faithful. And it's one of those things where you were able to focus on her words and her prayer, you know, and so I think that's just the way God is all the time. You know, all the time he's that way. We have to learn to receive him that way every single day, no matter what. Because I know, like, when I was with my son and I heard that a little negative news, I could have just focused on that. And that could have been the only detail I focused on. But God said, no, focus on the better. You know, focus on the details of what is good. You know.
I guess because it's so easy to focus on the negative. That's kind of our natural inkling, is to be like, focus on what's all the negative. What can't I change about the situation? What am I stuck in? Like, that's just where our mind goes, right? Because of sin and all of that. But when you start looking for, like, what is God doing in this situation? Like, how can either I be a light to someone else, or how can I receive light myself? You know, like, and so you start looking for those things, and I think it's just confirmation, like, it's confirmation of God's love for us is in the details. Like, all of it just plays out, and you're just like, wow, God.
It's kind of how this says, you know, he tells Moses, you know, he's compassionate, he's gracious, you know, he's abounding in love, he's faithful, he's slow to anger. All these details he gave him shows up all the time, like through her calling you, you know? It showed God's faithfulness to the way you were feeling. You know? Because he loves you.
So true.
So, I mean, I don't know. We can go on and on about, oh God, it's so good.
I was, and I don't really have much else to share, but we've talked about this a lot, and I think it's a reoccurring thing with us, which resonates through each of us, but it's also, I feel, really important to us all to mention constantly, but perspective. And I was just thinking, as you were saying that, that Carmen was looking, you know, okay, but, you know, what can God do? And seeking that out, I think that's a reflection of the mind that you have. And it's so important for us to have the mind of Christ. And because naturally we can look to what's negative, or we can hyper focus on something that's not breathing life into anything, that is just weighing us down, a distraction of the enemy. I know my friend this morning, she's like, well, I've just been thinking about this thing over and over and over again. I didn't know what to do. And we talked about, like, maybe you're focusing on the wrong thing. Instead, let's focus on, like, who God is and what he can do for you. But I think it's so important to be intentional to have the mind of Christ. I think you doing that and the way that we purpose to live our lives is a reflection of the fact that we have chosen that we will never be victims in a circumstance. We're not just things don't just happen to us, but we're always looking, okay, God, what are you trying to do? What are you wanting to do? What are you speaking to me? Like, we're just always searching and trying to look for where Christ is
Right.
in it. And I think if you really want to know what the details are of what God is doing,
Right.
it's something that's going to require us to take action to seek out.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you're seeking it out, and that's the desire of your heart, and you're purposing to have that mindset, you will see so much more than you ever saw before, and you will start to notice those details.
Right.
One other quick detail from my day today is because I told all of you guys, I also texted Rachel from church. And I told her, she's like, well, hey, what time is your test? And I said, I'm 12:30, tentatively, 12:30. Literally at 12:30, she sent me a text that was just the praying hands and a heart emoji, and that was it. And it was like right when I was about to start my test, just like another quick reminder, like,
Right.
we're praying over you, like God's got you, like this is good, like
Right.
just kind of like, come on, girl.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
like I was fine, but I was like, mentally I was like gearing up, like I was getting all my stuff, and I'm like, okay, no, like it's good, and then that text just really quick pops up, and again, it was just like a settling.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I could easily dismiss it. I could not mention it. It was just a text with 2 emojis, no big deal.
Right.
And yet I know that that was just a small, tiny little detail of something else that God did for me today. Like, how many other things are there? You
And
know?
it's true, because even when I was sitting there in the doctor's office with my son, I said to him, you know what? I know this and this was said, but I want you to know, don't worry about it, because God always takes care of it. I'm not even concerned, because I didn't want him to be thinking about it,
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that was going on with him. It was just one detail, it was just a detail that was like, really. But I said, don't worry about that. I said, because I said, God is making sure that you're taken care of so that you can do what you love to do,
Yeah.
And so when we walked out of there, he was smiling. He was,
that's
he had
awesome.
such a big smile
Love it.
because he realized, I'm going to be able to finish this year strong.
Yeah.
And that's how God is with us. He wants all of us to know that he's there for you, with making sure he's taking care of every detail so you finish strong, no matter what it is.
Yeah. That's why I was going to read this last verse. Thanks.
Okay. You can read that verse.
Are we all cutting each other off?
Yeah, I just have to read this verse because it ties in, and it's kind of been on my heart a lot lately. It's 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
Amen to that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I love that.
And done.
Yeah, cut. We're done.
Bye.
No, that was a great verse. Can you read it one more time?
One more
And then
time.
we can just end it there, because I know it's late.
2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. Therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
Amen. So, yeah, it's a lot of piece of that. So, we're gonna end it with that. I love that scripture. It's a great way to end it tonight. And I want to thank all of you for being a part of Coffee with Carmen. We're starting a new year, right? And as I always say, don't ever forget, always remember that there's always hope in Jesus. God bless.